Good morning. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Mr. Cox here. Q&A number 2. We've had some guests that were um, people are asking a little bit or what about the Q&A, and I just thought that it would be a good thing for you guys to get to know me a little bit more. Excuse me while I kind of get things situated here. I apologize. To get a little bit more, I've got some more text messages and stuff in from some students and stuff like that, and we can talk on some more personal stuff today and what it looks like to live life with purpose and have a goal and how to succeed in a goal and stuff like that. So I'm hoping that we can, let me turn on here real too. If you guys got any kind of comments that are coming through, if you guys got any comments, if you got any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments bar. I do have my phone. If you guys have my personal cell phone number and you want to text me some, I've got some questions that we're going to go over a bit this morning and talk a little bit about life. Life. Can it be complicated? It can, but can it be awesome? Yes, it can. All right, so here's what we're going to talk about, guys. So I guess you guys know that they were asking. First of all, I got some questions on why did I start podcasting, and as the years start ticking by, I started this a couple of years ago, and I started it in my garage, and just what I really did is to start it as a journey when I was first starting my health journey, what that looked like, and then what it took off to from there. And as I continually grow, I get more and more into how to how to do podcasts, how to make it a little more engaging, how to make it more exciting. And it just like this is a learning process, guys. If you go back to number 1 and 2 and back on my podcast, you'll see that being in front of a microphone, it can be a little bit daunting because you got, there's a lot of things that, and when I go back and I listen to myself, which I do every podcast, I go back and I listen to the podcast. I try and see how many and and you know what I mean? How many times I say that, and I make a conscious decision, which I think is a great thing to talk about, right? I'm making these conscious decisions on trying to be more articulate in how you speak, how to engage the audience a little bit more. And I have a coach. I question my coach quite often on podcasting on what this looks like, and continually try and grow an audience. And for you guys, so just so you guys know, if you guys can, this is how you guys can help me grow an audience. Okay. If there's things that in the podcast that you think that you got something out of, okay, if you could just hit a share button and say, hey, listen, this is my instructor, or I've known Mr. Cox for a while, or maybe you don't know me at all, and I've got listeners. Matter of fact, I got listeners across the world. It's kind of, when you go look at your analytics and you see that there's people in Japan, which I believe that's my drum instructor who's in Japan listening, and we got the Philippines, and I had somebody in I don't know, it was Africa or something. Just being able to be in front of a microphone and reach out to an audience is just pretty awesome. To be quite candid, that we have the ability to do that. So the reason I started podcasting, guys, really was, first of all, to kind of do my journey and have it, where I can go back and listen to how I felt back in those days and what I was looking at in those days. And then, believe it or not, is to be able to leave kind of a legacy for my children, right? So, when I'm gone and they have something, they can come back and they can look on and say, hey, this is how my dad felt back in these days. And, my feelings may change as the years go, which they do. As you continually try and get older, you guys, things that you thought were super important are just not as important anymore. It's you know y the busyness of life, and then all of a sudden you hear as a young man that, man, the years go by so fast, and then pretty soon you blink your eye and there you're there as one of the old men, and you hear that, and that's quite the truth, to be honest with you. So here's some questions I got. That's one of the questions I had. Why podcasting? And I did it just so that I can have some legacy. I really, really enjoy, uh, the couple things I like. I like storytelling. I like, uh, I like interviews. I like to have. I'm always amazed at when I interview people on just the diversity that people have is pretty awesome. And so I enjoy a lot about learning about what others' past were, and how that contributes to how they contribute to what they do in life. I just think it's just awesome to. I always learn something kind of new, like I didn't know about that in your life that you did that, or and that that's the beauty of interviews, right? And then you make it live, and then it can get very engaging, and then as you get engaging, you it goes off to another, it branches off here, and then it kind of it comes back together. And let me tell you, I've done quite a few of these now, interviews and standalone podcast. And I started out just doing you know podcasting for traditional, where it's just talking. I didn't have video really involved. They'd come into the studio. In my early ones, you guys can go back and look at Lewis or Myron and all these guys. These guys came into my office and we were doing podcasting, and it's all started way back in the pandemic, early, a little bit before the pandemic, but through the pandemic, uh, it even, I even escalated it even more. And then StreamYard comes around and we're able to do these podcasts. I mean, as much as tech can be a pain in the ass, but it also is awesome that we're able to. I mean, I'm having one of my black belts is a minister out in Papua New Guinea, and we're having a podcast while he's out in the jungle. I mean, think about that. I mean, this is reaching across the ways and bringing us back in together. It's pretty awesome, to say the least. And this is what we get to do on a daily. So that's the reason for the podcasting. And so I got some personal questions today. I thought, I don't want to bring names up because, when you bring names up, it could go south. But one of the questions posed was talking about divorce and co-parenting, and any advice that we have on that. This was a something that came across text message today. And so here's what I can tell you, because I've done this already. I've gone through a divorce, and we in a 20-year marriage, and then filing for divorce. And not to get into the nitty-gritty, because I'm not really here to pound what happened in my personal relationship back then, but uh what is the after effects of divorce and lessons learned. Let's talk about the lessons learned and what I've what I've learned from this. So I know that you guys that have gone through this kind of things, you'll be shaking your head and you'll be like, yes, I know how that feels, and stuff like that. Here's what I do know about divorce. Divorce is a nasty animal, and it involves you. If you have kids, it's even more nasty, right? Because it really kind of boils down to money and using the kids to manipulate that to whichever party needs to have it manipulated. And um, I think that when you I can talk to you from a man's perspective, okay? Like from a man's perspective, right? So I think sometimes, divorce there's so much anger involved in divorce, right? And the nastiness that goes on, because the person you're divorcing probably knows everything about you, and everything that kind of triggers you, and everything that is important to you, and everything that's not important to you. And then it's kind of manipulated against you in a way that uh you know it makes you feel uh, pissed off, sad, angry. These are all the all the emotions that we go through when we're going through this garbage. And so, one thing, if there's anything that I can do after, because I've been divorced for a minute now, and my children are grown young adults, and so I'm in a different place uh, than I was when it was all fresh, and the circumstances surrounding it, and how upset you are. And then as a guy, we feel like there's a failure that has occurred, and so when you feel like that you failed, you also you have another wave of emotions of you know I stuck this thing out and I failed, and then that all those emotions go down on you, and then you got your children that you're trying to, and you're separated, and from when you're going to spending the night with them every night until what divorce ends up being, right? Now, not to knock any of my past or my ex or anything like that, but just to know that I was able to um, have the kids probably 90% of the time. Okay, she was she knew that they were more stable with me that way, and so I was one of those single dads that was got to be involved in my children's life, and I got to go to the schools and go on field trips, and I had this martial arts school which allowed all that to happen, which was great. Just you know, I miss some of that, right? Especially in these times, right? In October, we would go, and I'd go watch them in their little costume thing, and we would get pictures of that. And then, the Thanksgiving break, and then it's Christmas time. You're going to go see Christmas pageants, and you miss all that. Uh, but I was still able to uh, enjoy it. Now, as far as co-parenting and those are the questions I have, and I can just give you some life experience, guys. Okay, I'm not a doctor by any means, but I'm not uh, a psychologist or anything like that. But I am a realist for sure, and I can only give you advice out of me personally. I took, and let me just be clear. This didn't come overnight, just so you know. This was years of aggravation, of anger, and everything else that goes with it. Trying to get back at somebody and stuff like that. When I learned just to be quiet in the moment and not, whether you're getting text messages that getting you all fired up and stuff like that, as opposed to reacting, I just let it go. And uh, when there was not as much anger, then I would try at that time and have a better conversation of what it is we had to do. And this has taken a long time. I just came to a point that I would not respond to any text messages of anger or voicemails. I just wouldn't respond to them. And when you don't respond, and you don't get a rise out of the other person, because I really feel, if you want to be real, that what we're trying to do is get our point across, and we're pissed off at the other person. And so, there's always a little bit of hurt, and there's always a little bit of dig in there. And let me get their dander all up today. And I've just tried to learn to be quiet in the moment, because here's one thing I can tell you guys. And this is true not just for divorce guys, but this is just true, as real can be. And I fail at this, just so you know, on a daily. There is, you cannot, there's nothing you can do to make somebody else do what you want. The only thing you have control of, ladies and gentlemen, is how your emotions and how you're going to react to emotions being thrown at you. That's all you can do. You're not going to be able to control them. If you want to try and get, I mean, it's almost like Facebook, right? We're trying to get our point across on Facebook, and what happens? We we quip back and forth on Facebook, like the other person on the other line is just going to be automatically on my side because I've thrown some facts out there, but the facts that I throw aren't the facts that they really care about. So we argue back and forth on Facebook, For what? For nothing. So our points aren't getting across that way. The only way points get across, guys, is through relationships. I feel, right? So you have to be able to have a relationship of, uh, you know, if I want your, how am I trying to say this? Because I don't want any dead air. But if I'm trying to get my point across, and we are going to argue over Facebook, we get nastier and nastier because we're behind a keyboard and we can kind of say things and stuff like that. Stuff that we would never say when we're sitting having a cup of coffee together because it's just rude, you know? And we're so passionate about what we feel, or we're so passionate about what we believe, that it becomes rude on Facebook when we're sitting down having coffee, and we can, and that doesn't mean there isn't arguments, but at least we can be human to each other. I don't know if you agree, but these computers has taken humanity out of the equation, and we just got our fingertips going, and our mind is reckless. And then we say something, and then what do we do, guys, as people from this, right? We're going to get a negative comment, or we're going to get some troll, and then it's going to invade our head for the entire day, right? I can't believe so and so said that. I can't believe so and so said that. And it could not even be affecting them for the day at all, to be honest with you. So I think that as far as divorce and co-parenting goes, I think being a matter of fact, and 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 then, hard to say, easier said than done, is to have some sort of understanding where the other person is. Okay, when things are fresh in divorce, there's so much anger, it's not even funny. But as time goes on, you really, really crave just peace. And if the other person isn't giving peace, then you got to give peace in order to get peace. You understand what I'm trying to say there? You've got to not react. You've got to let things go. I can tell you this, as your kids get older, and mine are all older now, and we had talk as adults, how they feel and what they feel back then is I shake my head sometimes and go, man, what was I doing? Why did I even do that? You know, because they really see a lot of things that go on. They really understand the dynamics of what's going on. It's not like they're not in the loop. They're right in the middle of it. So if there's anything I can tell you guys, I mean, I can go on this subject for a long time. Don't be reactive to things. Take a minute. I've done this several times where I've gotten, even on Facebook, I talk about not doing it, and here I am. There's days that I see something, I'm writing, I'm going to retaliate. I read it back, and then bang, I hit delete. It's almost like weird, right? It's almost like I vented, but I didn't send it, but at least I got it out, and I wrote it out, and that's how I feel. And I hit delete instead of send, and it's like, okay, I feel better. At least I got my point across, and I didn't do something stupid where it escalates to a whole new level, okay, and ruin relationships. Listen, I was really bad at this, just so you guys know, way back in 2012 or whatever, posting stuff and being super political and all that kind of stuff. It just didn't go well. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that you want to hide your views or whatever you have. If you're on an open thing and you want to talk about your candidate that you like for president, you should be able to voice that. Okay. Um, but it's for real, right? When we start looking at what other people do, we almost take our relationship for granted, going, well, I can't believe so and so did what? And we take granted the relationships we have with somebody. And instead of just turning it off mentally and enjoy the relationship, we get into all this nastiness that really, at the end of the day, doesn't really matter, because regardless of what president is in right now, when push comes to shove, we have to be there for each other. We got to be able to, um, locally help each other out, and bring each other up when the going is tough, and when economy is just doing what it's doing now. We have to be able to be there for each other, and uh, and make sure that we have our best foot forward. So I guess that's the kind of the best things I can give for you. Just remember one thing: you can only be responsible for your reactions and what you do. You can't be responsible for others and what they do. And to put it simply, and maybe if that helps out, great. If you can hear it from me, and because sometimes we will talk, is this not true, right? The closest people to us sometimes are the hardest people to talk to. They're always there for us. Family's the most important, right? They're always there for us, but they don't always tell us what we really want to hear. And we're not really receiving what they're saying because we don't want to hear it. And so maybe a third party, that's why it's always kind of good. And you can kind of hear from me and maybe some of my experiences in life, because it was devastating for sure. Uh, some of the stuff that I had to go through was life altering for sure, and changed my mindset a lot. But let me tell you what. Let me give you some positives out of the divorce. It made me become such a better father that I couldn't imagine not going through that. Okay, being a single dad made me just a better man, and so I think that's the most positive thing that happened out of it. So hopefully that helps out. If that gives you any kind of indications of, as far as co-parenting goes, listen, that's all. Co-parenting is what it's about: relationships. You got to have a really good relationship, or with the kid's best interest, and that takes time. Just so you know, this isn't going to happen overnight. If it does happen overnight, it's a blessing. All right. When there's going to come a point where the kids are more important than your feelings, and that's when co-parenting can happen. Not easy. Trust me when I say not easy, but that's the best advice that I can give as far as that goes. So, all right. So I got some other questions on uh, what it looks like. What my martial arts school, as far as why it started or how it started, or I know you guys have heard the story many times. Maybe you guys are listening to this for the first time. You really don't know how Chatsworth Karate started. If you're at black belt testing, you've heard this story many, many times. I've told you exactly how this all goes. Listen, I did not do school. I did not like school. All of my children have more degrees than I do and than I ever have. I went to Pierce College, just like uh, everybody did. I got very close to an AA degree. This school just wasn't for me. Uh, I just wasn't. I don't know. I don't know if I wasn't cut out for it or whatever. I was more of an entrepreneur, and that's what I enjoyed doing. Anytime I worked for a company, I always had something else on the side that I did. And then, if you guys don't know my background a little bit, my grandfather Bryce was a machinist. My father is a machinist, and they were both. My dad my dad's mechanically is such mechanically inclined. He was an awesome machinist of mine, and so was my grandfather. And so naturally, that's what I started in, and I was in a machine shop and grinding parts, and that's working with super fine tolerances, and building things and working on CNCs, which is a computer. That you go program stuff, and it makes it on a machine, and all the stuff that goes with machining. And it's not that I didn't enjoy it, but it just, once again, it was, if you guys know me at all, I'm super competitive in whatever I do. And I was very good at being a machinist that was production. So I'd always be getting there in the morning. I'd try always outdo myself. Okay, how much did I do yesterday? How do I make shortcuts but not sacrifice quality? How can I get more parts out today? It wasn't really me being uh, competitive with other people. It's just me. It's just competitive for me. That's just how I'm built. And so I remember, this is I guess back in 1985 or so. I was in a machine shop there in Northridge, and I was in martial arts at the time. I used to go at lunchtime and take class when I could, and there was railroad tracks right behind where I worked, and I would, I'm getting ready for black belt testing and stuff like that, and I would go at lunch hour and either run the tracks. This is when I had better knees, but I would run the tracks and get ready for um, class at night and stuff like that. This is what I was doing. And I had this machine, and I had two machines. I was running two of them. One was on the right, one was on the left. One machine I would get ready, and it would be drilling holes and doing that kind of thing. The other one would be doing the next part of it, and I would just run both machines. I'd run them both. It was just competitive, and there was still downtime, but in between, you'd be putting what's called threads in a, in a part and stuff like that, and I'm making these hydraulic parts for hydraulic motors. That's what I was doing at the time. And so I used to have this vision I'd had this 3-month calendar every time I was red belt testing, and I would have a 3-month calendar on my machine. I taped it up there. I'd mark it off every day when I'm getting ready, when my black belt testing day is, and what my goals were. And I remember at that time going, this is something I think I want to do. Now, here's a bit of information you may not know, but my Simi Valley location is actually where I started teaching martial arts as a red belt. There's a dance studio in the corner. So if you go to my location, 4361 Township is the Simi Valley location. And I've got two of the bays there, but the one on the way left is a dance studio. It's a corner one. And believe it or not, that was Gary Ruskin's Tongsudo school back in the day. And I was a red belt back then. Brian Nan was there with me also. And as a red belt, I was teaching class and helping Gary Ruskin with that studio. So it's kind of ironic that 2 doors down, I have a Krav Maga school run by Jay Walker over there in Simi Valley. And it's just when I look back at that and go, wow, in 1985, I was actually teaching class in that corner building. It was a martial arts school. And we fast forward to where we're at now, and I have a school there. I've had one there 5 or 6 years now. And it's remarkable when you think about it. But on my machine, I used to have this goal, and even back then, I wished we didn't have cell phones like we do now, but I wish I had a picture of it where I would say, goals, black belt, goals, 3rd-degree black belt, and master's rank wasn't even hardly talked about. It wasn't even a topic of discussion back then. But 2nd and 3rd degrees were held in high esteem, high regard, and so I had this goal, and then I had a goal of 100 black belts underneath me. That was my goal. And lo and behold, I got laid off from that job, just so you know, and then I ended up being a pool man, and that's what I did. So once I was out there doing pool work, which I enjoyed, a great summer job, and jumping in everybody's pool and cleaning pools and stuff like that. I enjoyed that. And the winter, it really sucked with the wind here in California. That job was not fun in the wintertime, but it is what it is, and it's what allowed me to open up Chatsworth Karate. I was doing 1987. When I got my black belt, we were doing work up there in the church at Rocky Peak. I started as a ministry, and then all of a sudden it blossomed where I told Mr. Knight I'd like to have my own school. I found a location. I found a corner location. Now, here's the story. I'm not sure if you know how I came about with this, but I didn't have a lot of money back then. But this place had been open for going on 10 years. No one's ever leased it. It's in the corner of Lassen and DeSoto, and it's been. And so I called this agent, and I had some people trying to help me negotiate, but this guy wouldn't give me the time of day. He goes, well, you don't have any money and stuff like that. And I said, but I have enough students that will cover rent and that would follow me. And he didn't really want to give me the time of day. So what I did is I said, okay, well, if that's how it's going to be, then I need to figure something else out. And I had a student that owned apartment buildings and stuff like that. And he's the one that said, hey, we can run a property profile on this thing and find out who the owner is. which I didn't know anything about back then, but he's the one that helped me with that. And we run a property profile on this, and then guess what happens? Here we go with um, we see that a dentist owns this in Reseda, and so I made my appointment to get my teeth cleaned. And when I sat in his chair, I said, "I'm not here for a cleaning. I'm here because I can't get the releasing agent to let me talk to you." So I decided to seek you out and ask you if it's possible that I lease this building, and this is what I have. And he was just taken back at the time, going, "You're very resourceful and stuff like that." And he said, "Listen, Mark, I'm going to give you a 12-month lease, flat rate. This is what it's going to be. If you can make this happen in 12 months, then we will extend it from there." And this gentleman's the one that gave me a start. And then this is how I came about. And this is how Chatsworth Karate was formed. And lo and behold, back here now, and I'm in the 700s now as far as black belts go on how many I've given out. And so that's just a brief history. I had a quick question on how I came about. So I wanted to make sure that you guys knew that, you guys have heard this story 10 million times, probably at black belt testings. I say it quite often. And I cannot tell you guys. So tell me, let's talk about let's get to some of the reality of what opening up and being an entrepreneur. Now, listen, my folks are entrepreneurs. They always have been. My dad had his own machine shop. My mom had a consignment store that she made work, and they sold that business. My folks have owned a couple machine shops, as a matter of fact, and they've always just been kind of an entrepreneur spirit. My dad was even a painter back in the day when he was painting apartments. I remember doing that as a child. Even myself as a child, my parents gave me work ethic. I may not have done the college route, but my work ethic was impeccable, because even at 7 years old, I go back. I was on a street called Lameda Street in Encino. That's where we lived. I remember this house so well. It had a huge tree in the backyard, and we would climb that tree all the way to the top. But I had lawns to be done all the way down the block. So I'd have certain days that I would go mow everybody's lawn. And then across the street on Lameda Street, I would mow all their lawns. And I was kind of making money doing that. And so every week I had a little bit of cash in my, however it was back then. I mean, maybe I'm getting $5 or something like that back in the day to do some mowing. And I would, my dad would make sure I had the mower and it was running, and he'd buy the gas for me. And in a way I would go and I would mow these lawns as a young man, as a young kid. And, we're talking about, I don't know, 8 years old, maybe 9 years old. And, going down and mowing these lawns. And it wasn't like what we have today, these big blowers. I mean, this is old school, right? You mow the yard, you have an edger, and you have a broom and a dustpan, and then that's what you did. And we had, next door to us was an older couple. I would take their trash cans out for them and just do stuff like that. I was instilled with a solid work environment. And I just always liked being able to be kind of my own guy. And then always, I liked working like that because I'd have my own money. And that just kind of spilled onto me when I was about 15 years old. I was just telling this story the other day on, I started working between 14 and 15 years old. I was at the Leeds shoe store, believe it or not, when I was 15 years old, and I was stocking shelves in the back and stocking shoe shelves. And then there was a Lindbergh Nutrition also in the mall, in the Topanga Mall at the time. So that's where I'm working, right at Topanga Mall, and in two jobs. And so Lindbergh Nutrition, I'd go and wash dishes at the end of the night. So I'd have a job there. That's what I did. And believe it or not, I was like Bundy, and I ended up selling shoes, as a matter of fact, when I was, I don't know, 16, 17. In that area, I went from the stocking shelves to being on the sales floor, selling shoes. And my mom worked for that company also. And um, that's just what I did. I've had this kind of work ethic for a long time, being able to kind of get my own stuff. And this is some reality, guys. This is some real talk about um, how my parents raised me. I remember I want to say it's my 17th birthday, and my parents get me a car. But this is what they did. This is what they did, and it was pretty awesome. I remember this. And um, in the envelope there was a set of car keys. And the car was, I believe, a '69 VW Bug. That's what my folks bought me. And inside there was keys. And what my folks did is put the down payment down and made the first payment, gave me the keys, and I was responsible then for insurance and the car payments afterwards. I remember the car payment being like $69 a month. I don't know why that sticks in my head. It just does. And so I had my own car at 17 as a gift from my folks, but I'm the one that had to pay for it. And then even when I turned 18, my folks, I wasn't going the college route, right? And I wasn't being quite as productive as I probably should have. I was working probably a graveyard shift, I believe, in a machine shop somewhere. And my folks said, "Hey, if you're not going to go to school, it's time for you to get on your own." And on my 18th birthday, what they did is they got me an apartment on Reseda Boulevard in Reseda, right across the street from Reseda Park, where they feed the ducks. It was a junior one-bedroom apartment. My folks paid for the first and last month rent, handed me my keys on my 18th birthday, and said, "You're on, this is your gift." And that was a great gift. It just forced me to be the man that I needed to be, um, and be self-reliant and self-sufficient, and not rely on all that. And that this is just how this is how I grew up. This is my backing. So if you guys, you you know when you look back, what martial arts, I didn't have martial arts back then. Just so you know, I was 18 years old. I didn't start until I was around 21. It wasn't until my brother was going to high school that he started doing martial arts, and I'm the one that came in underneath him after that and said, "Okay, wow, that was something I wanted to do with him." You guys have heard the story on how I got started in martial arts, and then it just took off from there, and I just knew that I wanted to own a school, and that's what I really wanted to do, and I wanted to change people's lives, and because the martial arts had changed my lives. Had I not had it, even though I had great work ethic and everything, guys, I didn't really have direction, just so you know. I wasn't directed. I didn't have that mentor. I didn't have that coach. I had my dad. My pops is awesome, right? And I watched my dad for many years on how he dealt with people and how he did things, but I didn't have that drive. I didn't have that coach. I really don't know what I would have had if I had a better coach anyway with sports. I played all the sports in junior high school. In junior high school, I was the president of student council. Back when I went to junior high, I was in a private school called St. Paul's in North Hollywood, and then I was the president of student council in my ninth grade year. So back then, you had elementary school, and junior high was 7th, 8th, and ninth. It wasn't like it is today. You go to school, high school, 10th, 11th, 12th. And so these are so you can get some background on me on why martial arts is so important to me. Uh, when I was there, I played a lot of sports. I did all sports, all of them. And I did the student council. I became president of the student council in my final year there. Uh, got a most improved student, I think, in 1977, if I remember right. I'm trying to remember some of these awards. Believe it or not, my junior high days were much more. I have friendships from those days today. I don't have any friendships from high school. And I don't know why that is. I just didn't have the best of times in high school. I went from a very private school of three, very, very little children to Reseda High School, where there was tons of people, and I just didn't make great decisions in those times. I just didn't make good decisions. And so, I get to this martial arts, and this is something that I love. And I thought in my head, um, back, a lot of things happened to me. back then. It was November 16th, 1977. This is kind of a life-changing day for me. I remember this like it was yesterday. I'm sitting at Reseda High School, and and I'm kind of new at this school, but I wasn't on the varsity team. I was on the JV team with Coach Ray, but I had taken a spot on the defensive side of one of the main guys, right? And so what happened is, his name is Carlos, and I'm sitting on the bench, and he walks by, and he's kind of looking at me, and I'm looking back at him, and he goes, you took my spot," and I didn't really say anything. He walked past me, turned, and hit me right square in the jaw, and broke my jaw in two places. If you ever look at my inside here, you'll see all the wires. November 16th, I'll never forget this day. It's 1977. He hits me. My jaw breaks here and here. So I had a broken jaw from his hit. And I remember something wasn't right. I didn't get knocked out, but something wasn't right. I went to my coach and I said, "Coach, hey, man." And you could see by his eyes then, and then I had emergency oral surgery. And when your jaw is broke like that, back in that day, they wired me shut. So I had wires. I couldn't open my jaw. I was like this forever. My teeth are clenched if you can't see it on video, right? So you imagine being like this, talking, having to eat through a straw, having to sneeze, having to yawn. That's how it was for me for almost 6 weeks, right through Thanksgiving and Christmas. And my mom's trying to make it so I can have a Thanksgiving, and so she would put stuff in a blender and see if I could eat it back then. And I remember that going, wow, I didn't defend myself. I couldn't do anything. I was naturally a tough guy because I played football and I did all that stuff. But being kind of bullied, I was kind of a tough dude. And then martial arts came around, and I just thought, hey, man, you know what? This is just going to make me be a little bit better because that's not going to happen to me again. And that's what happened to me in high school. And then I ended up in a continuation through Reseda High School. Believe it or not, I was in continuation school. But once again, I super excelled there. I was on my own. I get to work at my own pace. And when you get to work at my own pace, I didn't have somebody putting a thumbnail on me. I was able to excel in that and ended up graduating relatively quick and being able to go off to Pierce College, which once again, I didn't really go too much into college either. So that's kind of Mr. Cox's background, just so you guys know. But work ethic was really important for me and stuff like that. So we got Patrick here. Let me see his question he's got for me here. Let's say, hello, sir. Martial arts has changed so much since the 80s and 90s, especially with the UFC coming around. Do you miss anything about martial arts from before MMA became so popular and changed the landscape? That's a good question. That's a good question, Patrick, about that. You're correct. The martial arts has changed since the 80s and 90s. It was, back in the 80s when I trained, you just didn't know you didn't know, you had your school, and that's what you kind of did, right? And when I got my black belt in 1987, I remember that day. I mean, it was pretty no nonsense. I mean, it was a panel of people that you've never worked out with. And so a lot of black belts back in the day, they'd come in and test your fate, but not have any part of your growth. So, it was a power struggle a lot of times. You had some really great black belts. So don't get me wrong. There's some really guys that are sharpening the sword and voting for you and rooting for you and getting you to David Starachi and Ken Knight and these type of men that were there, sharpening the sword for you. But a lot of times, when you get to testings back in those days, I mean, you missed a key eye in a form, you just failed your test. And lower ranking testings would be up by yourself. I mean, you guys can go on my Venmo and see when I was a green belt. I've got my green belt test and stuff up there, what it looked like doing attacking combinations, doing kicking combinations, and what what has changed? Do I miss anything about martial arts before MMA? What I got to tell you, Patrick, the answer to that, what I miss the most is respect. Okay, I mean, it was being respectful in the studio was just something that I do miss. But here's what I don't miss: the impracticality of self defense. Even in doing karate and back in the day, doing Tong Soo Do back in the day, uh, and and wondering, why are we doing this? What is this for? And not really having an explanation. You do what you do because you do. You fight. If you're going to be a fighter, man, you came to fight class on Friday nights, and if you got your ass kicked and you came back, you got better. That's your training. It wasn't like we had intro to fighting or anything like that. And so after, you know, once you, I just remember that, which is such a waste, man. Right? But we were super tough. I mean, the guys that were fought back in the day were tough dudes. And that's just how it was. And I remember going through this stuff and asking Mr. I, and I remember vividly, I mean, Brian Nan and we would, I don't know, we got really into watching judo and, you know, George Kirby. I took a few classes there. Brian took even a little bit more, and I said, "This is stuff that we need." And the biggest eye opening for me, Patrick, was when we did um, uh, an ATSDA up at the church. I mean, it was packed from all the different schools, all the everybody there, and we were supposed to have Jean-Jacques Machado come and do the second part, and that's who we had there to do it. And David Myers came, and he was a brown belt at the time. I'll never, ever, ever forget this. And I was kind of the pit bull back then, so that was my reputation. I was kind of the pit bull of the studios, and you know, I wasn't the only, you know, most awesome fighter, but I was just one of those pit bulls there, Mr. Ichikawa's pit bulls. And he's coming to do this ground fighting. Jean-Jacques can't make it that day. He sends David Myers. David Myers is a brown belt. You know, and here's the thing about David Myers, right? He's a vegetarian, super thin. And so he's doing this, and we're watching this. And so he rolled with every single one of us. And I watch him tap people out like they are nothing. We have no clue what we're doing on the ground back in those days. Zero, none, nada. And I know I'm thinking, man, you know, everybody's waiting, right? Everybody's waiting for him to get to Mr. Cox, right? And I'm just like, I knew in my head at that time, I'm like, this is not going to go well for me. Okay. I'm going to get my ass tapped pretty easily. And so, sure enough, Dave Myers comes around, and it's like, here he comes, and Mark Cox up, and everybody else. And I don't know. He probably armbarred me, choked me 2 or 3 times, and I'm just trying to be just so aggressive, right? And the more aggressive I became, the more loose he became, and the more controlling of me he came. And I remember him laying on top of me and I'm just thinking, this guy feels like he weighs 1,000 pounds and just kind of sucking the wind right out of me. And I remember that day vividly because I'm like, you know what? We're going to have to fix that. And then that's how Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu came around in my school, because we took and I'll tell you a funny story about this, but that's how, you know, we took privately from Dave Myers for a long, long time, Mr. Carlin, myself, Bo DeRocher, and that's what we did. We took in private lessons with him for years upon years that we could, and then he moved to San Francisco, and then, you know, that's how John Will and stuff came to our school, and we continue with that. So, but here's a funny story. I'm at John Jacques, and Dave Myers says, "Hey, let's work out at John Jacques today. You guys come down to Tarzana and let's roll there." And I said, "Okay." So we had a private lesson in a private room. We're doing this. We had our uniforms on. I really wasn't wearing white belts then. We just kind of put our uniforms on. We did our thing, and I had our black belts on from the studio. And he goes, "Let's go in class and roll." I will never forget this. Okay. Um, uh, and so I decided that, you know what? Let's go out to the mat and roll. I had a black belt on, and I will never wear a black belt into a jiu-jitsu unless I am one. I am not wearing that into a jiu-jitsu. And we were spanked. Our asses were kicked. And I'll look at Dave Myers with a smile, and it's probably like, you freaking set us up for that, man. And I'll never forget that day. We were just spanked, and it was so just humbling, to say the least. So that was for sure what happened with that's how ground fighting came about. So do I really miss anything about it? No, I think MMA has what made everything else even better. It makes us better. The generations that I was back in those days, you guys are better. You're better than I was. Even at where you're at now, your students are going to be better than you because you've got all this vast stuff that you get to show your students, and when you're still kind of a young man, right? And all the stuff that I got and I learned after first and second and third degree, and all the stuff that I brought in and stuff like that, you guys get to get better and better at, and the generations are just going to become better and better and better. And look at this, guys. And look, right, Patrick? We've got little ones rolling at 3 years old. Do you have any idea that 3-year-old's going to look like when he's around me like you were? Could you imagine if I had all that when I was picking you up from kindergarten and bringing you, or first grade, and bringing you to the studio, and we had that kind of stuff? What kind of animal you would have been, even more than you are now with your brother? And think about that. You may have talked about it before already, but I would also love some stories from tournaments, competing, whether yourself or students. All my lessons were learned in competition. Super humbling, but you want to hear a funny one or you want to hear a serious one? I've told the serious one before. I have a podcast on ego. I tell it more in depth on that, but it was probably my most life-turning one. I'll never forget it. I'm in San Antonio, Texas. We are competing and breaking at that time, and I have got this place set up, and I am ready to destroy all competition in front of me. I really wanted this bad. And at that time, you get your picture taken. If you guys have ever seen it, I have back there in the NBLs and the SKAs, I've got those 2 plaques that I don't keep very many of my stuff, but I got those 2 plaques right before you enter the sales office on when I won those. And I have jackets that I won as a champion. I guess I should put those in and hang them up at the studio, but I've got NBL jackets from when I won in tournaments. So I have an SKI that says SKI champion, and it's a windbreaker that's got a big champions thing. I don't even wear these. I haven't. I haven't wore them. I think sometimes, guys, I did competitions for myself, and I won a lot of competitions and I lost a lot of competitions. And I just think that over the time, I don't know if people really care about what I did back in the past. I mean, yeah, you call yourself an amateur champion at something, but I don't really know. What is, when it all was said and done, that's something I did in the 90s that I really enjoyed, and I wanted that kind of stuff. And at that time, I thought it was super important. It just doesn't seem to be as important to me it is today. But the lessons learned from it, super important, super important. You're bringing back memories in my head, so I'm trying to think about that. I guess I should bring these jackets in. I have a blue one that was when I was the SKI champion, and I got an NBL jacket when I took, I don't know, first or second or third or something in the NBLs, and they kind of embroider that stuff on their jackets for you. I've got black belts that are hanging in my office that says NBL champion and stuff like that. They would give black belts out for that. I just, guys, I just never wore that kind of stuff. It just wasn't, I just love to compete, and the acclimates that came from it, I just don't know if people really care about it, to be honest with you. But here's a story about my my world championship that I lost. And I've told you this story before, in that I'm going to give you a watered down version of it. So here's the watered down version. I am in competition, and I'm ready to go. I'm seated very high. I get to go towards the end, and I'm getting ready, and it looks like I'm going to break this building down, man. I've got so much stuff. I'm breaking bricks with popsicle sticks in between them, which is super hard to do. The spacers. I got some set up where I'm doing 5 or 6 bricks with 0 spacers, none. Just going to pile drive through those things, and this is what I'm getting ready to do. So once I do that, I'm set up and I'm getting ready, and then I see a competition and I see somebody coming in a wheelchair, and I'm like, oh man, you've got to be kidding me. And one of the hardest things in competition is going to compete against a disability. It's just hard. You have to be on your game, and because it's very hard to beat somebody that has those kind of odds, right? And stuff like that. So he comes up. He's before me. I remember this vividly in my head, just like it was yesterday. And uh he gets up and he's like, okay, I'm getting ready to uh break, and I'm watching him, and he does. So you have to kick, just so you know. So here's what he does. His legs don't really work, right? That's why he's in a wheelchair. So what he did is he stacked up these tiles, and he just lifted his leg and he dropped his leg on these tiles, and it just broke these tiles. I mean, I was like, wow, what the heck? And then he did this palm strike, but what he did is he lifted himself up off his chair. He pushed with his left hand to come up off the chair, and then a palm strike coming down. And it was a very impressive break, right? I'm just like, man, I'm thinking in my head, I'm already doing head games in my head, right? I just didn't just focus in on competition and just say, okay, you stay with your game plan, have it this. I'm letting all this stuff get into my head. And then he missed a break. When you miss break in high competition like that, you've already lost. There is no coming back from it. So in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm going to smoke this guy. And so I get up and do my breaks. And I mean, you guys have seen highlight reels of it. I'm breaking right-handed, left-handed. I'm headbutting. I break double stacks this way, 5 or 6 with 0 spacers. I did 12 with the right, 12 with the left, and I mean, I was just rocking it. And it looked like an earthquake hit that place when I was done. And I got up there and I was like, sir, right? And I was just like ready to rock. And then they called off scores, right? And the score is I lose this competition by 1/100th of a point. So it's like they score right in the black belt divisions, 9 point whatever to 10. And mine's like 9.9 or da da da, and his was 9 point whatever da da, and he wins this competition. I was so upset. I was so mad about it. I told Bo, I said, clean this shit up and I'm out. And I stormed off. I didn't pay any respects to the competitor. I didn't shake his hand. I didn't do anything. I left with such an ego in my head that I was like, everybody can just F off. That's how I felt. I really did. And I was just totally mad. Just a jerk. Okay. 0 humility, 0 integrity, 0 courtesy, everything I preach, courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, and indomitable spirit, down in the toilet. I didn't really care, right? Once I get past that, I remember going past a booth and they were taking pictures of you for that magazine that particular year. And I'm watching the guy that won take his picture and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden I hear him call my name, Mark, Mark. And he turns around, he's wheeling towards me, and he has this board, and I have this board, and this is one of my most treasured things, and I cannot find it. It used to be in a trophy thing I have hanging on the wall, but I've yet to find it. I know it's in a box somewhere, but he wrote me a note, and he goes, "I know you won that competition," and he put our scores on it, and said, "Thank you so much," to me. Do you know what a jerk I felt like at that time? This guy had way more integrity than me, way more humility than me, and I remember taking the board going, "Man, you are a jackass, okay? You are a real gem, Mark." And I remember beating myself up for that, only to make it worse, when he comes out on the next day, they're doing some closing ceremonies. They highlight him, the breaker. He comes out, and then he tells the story of how he was hit by a bus, and the blood transfusion had an HIV in it, and that he is probably not going to be here within a year. And then he's going to pass away. I just remember sinking down and going, I am the biggest freak. I mean, I was not meant to win that competition that year. That was his glory days, probably the last competition he did. And instead of me being there happy for him and high-fiving him and telling him, you are the better man today, like that, I left that competition pissed off, egotistical, like a jackass, and only to have that lesson slap right in my face. What kind of instructor am I that I'm not happy for him? I should be like a poker face. When I win, I win with I look like this when I win. I look like this when I lose. I congratulate those, and I thank refs. How do I not have that humility to do that? Why? Because I had a really shitty ego, and it just did not fare well. Probably my biggest life lesson I ever had right there on how ego plays, how ego played in that. That was, I mean, I had a lot of fun times, guys. I'll end with this story. This is a funny story. So if you've been around me for a long time, there was United States Karate League Association. Sensei Peoples had this to do. We were competing back in the 90s every weekend, and we would get points, and then we would have the big competition, world championships at the end of the year. And I was going back and forth with this guy from breaking wise and self-defense wise and stuff like that. And I'm going back and forth. I think I got this USKL belt in my closet too, to be honest with you. I guess I should bring that stuff out. Maybe students would appreciate it. I don't know. But I'm at the end of the year. I'm the top seed. We went back and forth on who's going to be the top seed. I'm the last one. I get to go last. And this is awesome. Back in those days, USKL had a magazine. I'm on the back cover of the magazine. I'm breaking like 10 bricks with an elbow. I'm in the back cover. Okay. And if Bo's around, Bo attests to you, man, because I was there that day. I was lighting bricks on fire. I'm getting ready to do this. And they did a lot of finesse breaking. That's where I got breaking with a shot glass and all that. I got that all from them. But I would do finesse breaking, and then I would do power breaking. And, that's just what brings the crowd is power breaking stacks of stuff this high. I'm in this competition, USKL. Here we go. All right. We are getting ready to rock and roll. Mr. Cox is going last. And here comes my competition right before me. And I notice on one of his bricks, he has this magazine that is on top of a brick. And I'll never forget this. I'm like, what is he doing, man? And then bang, he hits the music. And then his song every freaking weekend that we competed was, you guys remember this song, right? This is how we do it, right? You know that song. Every time it comes on, it puts me right back into that era of this guy in a competition. So he puts on his music. This is how we do it. He's getting ready. He's got his last break, and he goes, judges, I'm going to break this stack of bricks with a magazine. And he rolls this magazine backwards so it's my face. And then he comes down on it, and he's using me to break his last bricks on the cover of the magazine. Oh my gosh, I was so fired up. I was so freaking pissed. And I was like, oh, I am going to smoke you even more than I was now. This is my world championship. That's when I told Bo, the 12 or 10 or 11 or whatever it was, I said, break it down, put popsicle sticks in between it, get the kerosene out, light them on fire. And that's how I'm going to break. And so I get to mine. And I remember this vividly. I get up there, boom, and I introduce myself, Mark Cox. My instructor is Dennis Ichikawa. Today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the same finesse breaks as my partner over here, but I'm going to also show you what power looks like today. And I just kind of putting a bug in the ears of the judges that, listen, what they just did ain't squat, because they can only do this part of breaking. I'm going to show you what breaking looks like. And I did the same breaks he did. I did a shot glass break. I did a palm strike break that he used to do, and all this kind of. I mimicked what he did, but then I came up, and then I said, judges, you're going to notice that this last stack that I'm going to do, there's popsicle stick, as far as spacers go. I'm going to break 4 with none, and I'm going to break these on fire. And so they lit them on fire. I broke the 4 first, and I looked them dead in the eyes, and I said, this is how we do it. And I just, boom, and I broke those things. And then I ended up winning that competition. I was the world champion on the USKL for that year. That's how I got that black belt in. He was so pissed off. Oh, my goodness. I thought we were going to have a little fight in the parking lot right there. And but he was super fun. But so those are 2 real memory stuff. I've got a ton of stories I can tell you, and and you guys, I don't know, Patrick, if you remember, I had a student that had prosthetics. He had a prosthetic arm and 2 prosthetic legs, and he could kick with his prosthetic legs, man. You get hit by one of those wooden things, him flew around from the knees down. And I don't know if you ever remember, he was in an ATSDA tournament, and he's doing he's doing nunchucks. And he's like, whap, 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 whap. And then he takes his arm off and he throws it, so people realize, like, wait a minute, he only has one arm. And he's doing his nunchucks, and he raised his leg up, and he took the nunchuck and banged on both his legs to see that they're prosthetics. And he did this jump turning heel kick in prosthetics to end his nunchuck form. And the crowd was just like, wow, unbelievable that he was able to do that. He was such a cool dude. So those are some fun ones of students. I got a ton of those. We can talk about those in the future. But Ashley Sage, you think about competing in the future. You already know the answer to that, Ashley. This I've got a bug to compete in this jiu-jitsu. At 60 years old, I'll be 61 in March. I'm looking to see what it looks like to do this competition in jiu-jitsu. After going to one, I am definitely going to be competing next year. There's no doubt. If I can find people in my division, in the heavyweight division, that's my age, ready to rock and roll, or I'm going to have to go down to these young 50-year-olds, I guess, next, if that's what it's going to be. However, I got to do it. I'm going to try it out. I'm either going to win, or I'm going to learn, or I'm going to choke the shit out of somebody if I can. That's for sure. Okay. We're already in this for 1 hour and 7 minutes. I hope some of these stories you guys got is good for you. I've totally enjoyed reliving that. I'm telling you that talking about some of this stuff has put memories back in, and this is something for my kids, Michael or Gabe and Danny, Ariel, but even Bo, this will remember. You guys can look back on this and see some of the stuff what martial arts has done. Listen, I have learned a lot of lessons in martial arts, and I continue learning them on a daily. I would say leadership, having ownership is going to be, if any advice I can leave you with on this podcast is have some ownership in yourself. Stop making excuses and start making waves. You know what I mean? Excuses are nothing but fear in my book. You make an excuse not to do something because you're fear of what can happen. I believe that a lot of people didn't compete this last time because they just have, I think there's a fear out there. There's a fear of loss, and there's a fear of embarrassment. Hey, I got to put myself out there. And you got to step on that line, and you got to do that thing. And I remember stepping on those lines in my competition years, and fighting in competition, and breaking, and doing self-defense, and stepping out there and doing things that people are a little bit miffed to do. It's hard to put yourself out there because you're going to have to take loss. There's no way that you become a champion and all you do is win. Impossible. Okay. Impossible. You're going to get, somebody on every given day is going to beat you at something. It just is what it is. And so People get so bottled up in fear that they never experience anything. I've seen this even in the last little competition that we had here at the studio. Students that are very good, but you know why they didn't compete? Because they don't want to lose. Really? Losing and my egos and all that kind of stuff are my most valuable lessons. It's not my wins. All my wins are hanging in my closet, or they were in the basement of all my trophies, or they're in this closet right now, this USKL belt that I had, won when I won world championships. All that kind of stuff is in the closet because I really never felt if anybody really cared about it, to be honest with you. I cared about it. It meant a lot to me. But but when it's all said and done, it's the lessons that come from it. So if you guys have fear about starting class, fear about starting a regiment, fear about your health, fear about failure, I think that's why we don't start anything in life, right? Is just out of fear. We don't want to lose weight because we're fearful that we're going to fail. Instead of looking like, okay, I had a bad day, let's get back on the horse and let's get up and get going, right? I don't want to start class until I'm in shape. What does that even mean? I don't want to start martial arts until I'm in shape. Use the martial arts to get your ass in shape, man. Step on the mat. Okay. Be a warrior. Don't be a man or woman of excuses, man. All right. Take that first step. Get out there and make things happen. It doesn't have to be martial arts, guys. I don't really care what it is, man. Take that step. Don't go buy a membership to a gym and then never go and say, well, I'm a member at Planet Fitness. That's like here right now, right? I've got black belts here that think that because they're a third or they've done enough time, enough time has come by. I'm getting ready to be a master. I'm getting ready to be this and that, and then they don't even do. They couldn't do. They've not trained for 2 years, 2, 3 years. Or you're a black belt that got your black belt back in the 90s and you think that you can automatically start teaching again because you got a black belt back in the 90s. Listen to me. If you are a doctor or you're a surgeon, right? And you become a surgeon and you decide that, hey, I'm going to go do politics, and I'm going to go in that arena. And then you're in politics for 10 or 15 years, but you were a brain surgeon 15 years ago. Is that the doctor you want working on you? You think he's in the fight? You think he's knows the newest technologies and newest things, what's worked, all those 15 years of experience he's been sitting in doing politics or in the Senate. You see that kind of example? Well, it's the same thing with a black belt, man. Are we just going to think because we got a black belt that we're automatically there? It doesn't mean you didn't earn it. You've definitely earned it. Everything you get to put going down forward, I earned a black belt in this. I earned a black belt in that. And the lessons learned from learning the black belt, it goes without saying. And, courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, indomitable spirit, having perseverance, getting through me, all that valuable life lessons, that does not go away. But martial arts and fighting is a perishable skill. If you do not sharpen the sword, okay, and continue your training and stay in tune with the best things or the most cutting edge things that you can do and improve yourself on the daily, are you really a well-oiled machine black belt? Okay. Is that the black belt you want on your side? Or do you want the aggressive hockey player that just came off a game and they're fighting on the ice? Which one do you want? The one that was a black belt 10 years ago, right? When they're 12 or 13, or do you want the young man that's on a hockey player that is nothing but natural aggression? Come on now. Or a military man or woman, right? So those are things that I think about. These are some of the lessons I've learned as far as being a martial artist, guys. I hope that I've answered some stuff for it. Let's see what Viverka says. I'm going to kill him. Well, I'm going to try. I can tell you that for sure. I'm not going out to lose. But I never went out to the competitions to lose, but I've done some mistakes and lost. I can do it. Let's see, what's this one say? Always trying to not to be a kitty cat. Yeah, well, we know what that really means. If you know, you know. Think about it for a minute. So I think that I'm going to wrap this up, guys. Enjoyed my time. Enjoyed reminiscing a little bit. I will have people. I believe I have interviews coming up. Listen, we got some awesome people coming up. December, the end of December, we got Jay Walker. Him and I are going to talk about 75 hard, and we're going to talk about this competition he's doing right now. He's in a bodies competition. It'll be done by the time he gets on. Robbie Edelman from Ventura is going to be on here right now soon. I've got one guy, a pastor from church that's going to become, his name is Chris Trio. He's coming on. Now, listen, guys, this is a guy's story is going to be off the chain because he started with us in what we did called Fight Club, and who fought drug addiction, drug dealing, all that, and now is a pastor. And a lot of that started in what was called Fight Club, which is basically a Bible beatdown where we would talk about the Word of God, pray for each other as men, and then beat the snot out of each other for a good hour. And just so you know that we're bringing that back. It's going to be Tuesday nights at 8. That's going to be happening here after the first of the year. It's an 8-week thing that we do through the church. Looking forward to doing that again. But we've got some awesome, I've got some other people kind of in the ball pin right now that you guys are going to really get to enjoy. So I hope you have an awesome day, guys. I love you all. Peace out.